Lakewood Ranch, Florida, one of the best rated communities in the United States. I've been living in Lakewood Ranch for almost 3 years now, and lately a lot of people have been asking me, what is life like in Lakewood Ranch? One of the top rated communities in the United States. And the crazy thing is, I've actually done this video like 2 or 3 times, and I've decided not to upload it because I live here and I think it's pretty much uneventful and uninteresting, but you guys have been asking me nonstop to make a video about life in Lakewood Ranch. Some of you guys have been asking me to go Uber driving in Lakewood Ranch and give you guys a vibe feel. Now that's been kind of difficult because most rides you catch in Lakewood Ranch are leaving the area, but on this particular day I actually got quite a few rides within Lakewood Ranch, so on today's video you're going to get a pretty in-depth feel of what it's like to live a normal day in Lakewood Ranch. So the first people that I picked up were in a gated community, and they were kind of irritating because for some reason they didn't know how to use the Uber app, which meant that they were calling me every 3 minutes to get an ETA. I've never had a passenger do this. I almost considered canceling on them, but I decided, you know what, let's just run with it and see what happens. Alright, so in this gated community, I picked up 2 passengers who were South Korean. Now in the past, I've learned that South Koreans are kind of timid and they don't talk too much, but these two seemed quite outgoing and talkative. She asked me where I was from. I said Cuba, so then I replied asking her where she was from, and they said that they were from South Korea, and they were just going from a gated community to a public supermarket. So we dropped them off at the public supermarket. One thing about Lakewood Ranch is there are so many Publixes here. I kid you not, I think there's about 7 Publixes in Lakewood Ranch. Now, technically, the population of Lakewood Ranch is like 30,000 people, but realistically, it's more like 80 to 100,000 people because Lakewood Ranch is actually much bigger than what most people would think. Realistically, anything in this area here is Lakewood Ranch. The northern half is in Manatee County, and the southern half is in Sarasota County. There's easily 100,000 people that live in Lakewood Ranch, but Lakewood Ranch is unincorporated. If we were going to get technical, Lakewood Ranch is a small area of 30,000 people, but realistically, anything east of 75 is referred to as Lakewood Ranch. And when I say Lakewood Ranch, I'm referring to the entire area of Sarasota and Bradenton that's east of 75, which is what anybody who lives here would refer to as Lakewood Ranch. To the right of us is a medical school, and this is the reason why we have so many Asians in this part of the metropolitan area. As you saw, the first people we picked up were South Korean, and the next passenger we're heading to pick up now is Indian. Now, when I first moved to Lakewood Ranch 3 years ago, this area was easily 90% white. Today, I couldn't tell you what the demographics are. We've had a lot of Asians move here for the schools, a lot of Latin Americans on student visas, so this has become very diverse very quickly, and the demographics changed from well-to-do white families and retired people. Now most people that are moving into Lakewood Ranch are going to be students, so the demographics of Lakewood Ranch have changed tremendously over the last 3 years. Now, I live in an apartment complex in this area, and I know why people are moving out and why people are moving in. So while I can't tell you a general demographical picture, I can tell you the reasons why a lot of people left Lakewood Ranch and why a lot of people are moving into Lakewood Ranch. Now, this is not opinion based. I am friends with my neighbors, and these are the reasons why they left the state. We had some really nice elderly people that lived here from Maryland, and they went back to Maryland. The reason that they left the state of Florida is because they didn't like the governor Ron DeSantis and the policies that he was putting in place. Now, these were really nice people, kind of like middle-aged, older American people. They were just the type of people I didn't want to see move away. The governor's policies have really left a bad taste in the mouth of a lot of people. The cost of insurance in the state of Florida. Many people moved to Lakewood Ranch to rent while they looked to buy a home. Some of them did buy a home in Lakewood Ranch and are still here, but many of them actually decided to move back to another state because they didn't like the cost of living in Florida, particularly the cost to insure properties. Now, I don't know if we lost anybody here because of the hurricanes, but I do know a lot of people from the islands moved to Lakewood Ranch after the hurricanes when their properties were destroyed. But the biggest outflow of people happened with SB 1718, the immigration law in the state of Florida that was signed by Ron DeSantis. I don't know how this led to the demise of the white population, but somehow it did. What I find interesting is that many of the people that left of 1718 were people that were in mixed racial status marriages or relationships where one person was white and the other person was from a different background, and they decided to leave the state of Florida not because the whole family was illegal, but because somebody in the family was illegal. So we had the hurricanes, we had SB 1718, and then we had all the problems that are happening through the entirety of Florida. I don't know exactly what has led to the massive outflow of people from Lakewood Ranch, but I do know that the demographics changed from being purely white to today being a lot more diverse. What we saw replace these people, we got to the point where we saw apartment complexes lose 30 or 40% of their residents after SB 1718. We could call this maybe the normalization. A lot of people moved to Florida during the 2020 COVID era, and a lot of those people found out that Florida wasn't for them. So perhaps that was that core of the white population that moved out, and for a while it did become kind of empty in this part of the state. Immediately, that population was replaced by people on student visas. Now, the diversity of these people, we wouldn't have time to get into it. A lot of Brazilians, Argentinians, Chileans, Peruvians, some Mexicans, a lot of Ukrainians, a lot of Russians, a lot of Europeans from every background you could think of. Basically, people from all over the world moved in and filled in that void. A lot of them came under apprentice visas or a student visa. North of Lakewood Ranch is Wilmama, which is predominantly Mexican. When I first moved to Lakewood Ranch, there were a lot of Mexicans here. There are not that many Mexicans now, and most of the landscaping jobs, for example, are being done by Cubans and Dominicans, so you're seeing a lot less Mexicans in Lakewood Ranch. So we finally pick up our Indian passenger and we're heading to the University Mall. We're on Highway 70, which is still in the Manatee County side of Lakewood Ranch. You can see that around this time of day, traffic is pretty heavy. This is kind of normal during the wintertime. So there's been a definite demographical change in Lakewood Ranch. And while the nationalities that have entered Lakewood Ranch now and filled up that void completely to where our population is kind of back to what it was before these changes, interestingly, we're on Highway 70 now, and it seems like there's almost nobody heading towards Bradenton or Sarasota. But you'll see once we get on the interstate, there is a little bit of traffic. But if I had to describe the demographical changes that took place in Lakewood Ranch, I would definitely have to say that Brazilians, Ukrainians, Cubans, and Haitians are the largest influx of people that we've seen here. Some of the Cubans came from Miami. Some of them are recent arrivals on temporary visas. Some of the Haitians came from Miami. And a lot of Haitians, particularly on the Manatee County side, are new arrivals on temporary visas. So it's hard to understand how recent arrivals are living in Lakewood Ranch, Florida. This is kind of a perplexing thing to understand until you realize that cities like Miami are actually more expensive than Lakewood Ranch and the jobs are not as good. So it actually seems kind of logical that being more affordable than Miami and having better job options, that this area here would actually have an influx of new arrivals. And again, it just seems really odd that for example, me and my wife, Katie, practically both grew up here in the United States, and we live in Lakewood Ranch. To see somebody that is a new arrival live next door to us is kind of interesting, but you just have to understand the dynamics of the situation. For example, household size and spending habits alone. Most of these people are living 3 to 4, even 5 people in a house. 4 incomes is more than enough to afford living in Lakewood Ranch, even if they're not high income jobs. And then you also have spending habits. These people are coming from Haiti. They eat rice and beans every day, maybe some chicken, and we're eating at fancy Mexican restaurants. So spending habits is something that you're just going to spend so much more money than they ever will. So it really does make sense if you just understand how they're living. Yes, they're living in Lakewood Ranch, but no, they're not driving around in an $80,000 car and drinking margaritas every Friday night. They're living kind of a more two-job lifestyle, 3-4 people in the same household. So they're able to afford living in Lakewood Ranch just because their household sizes are larger and their spending habits are more moderate. We're heading south on Interstate 75. You'll see that northbound is literally at a standstill. Now, the cheaper alternative to Lakewood Ranch for suburban living is a place called Parrish. It was the 9th fastest growing zip code in the United States. Those people stuck in that traffic are driving to Parrish. Now, this is an absolute nightmare of a traffic route. In fact, today I had a passenger from Lakewood Ranch driving 30 minutes into Parrish, and then driving them back to Sarasota would have been an hour and a half. I decided just to pass on this passenger. It wasn't worth it. So those who are thinking about Lakewood Ranch and decide to go with Parrish because it's more affordable, the money you're going to save on rent or housing, you're going to spend it on gas, time, Ubers, and delivery fees when you were too tired to drive into town, because there's practically nothing in Parrish, Florida. So I know a lot of people are picking Parrish, Florida. Literally, a new house in Parrish is more affordable than a rundown house in the hood in Sarasota or Bradenton. So many people who had a in the hood budget are now living in Parrish in a new house, and they think, well, we're in a new house in the suburbs, but it's not worth it. The commute is unbearable. There's nothing out there. Delivery fees are ridiculous. Times for Uber drivers and delivery, anything you need out there, you're in the middle of nowhere, and traffic congestion in and out of Parrish is a nightmare. Now, Lakewood Ranch is a planned community. As you saw, it is rush hour. There's a lot of traffic in Sarasota area, but while we were in Lakewood Ranch, there was practically no traffic anywhere in Lakewood Ranch. One of the conveniences of Lakewood Ranch is that because it's a master planned community, traffic flows very smoothly even during peak hours. The complete opposite can be said about Parrish. Parrish is a complete traffic nightmare. And if you live in Parrish and work in downtown Sarasota, for example, you can expect an hour and 15-minute drive each way. I personally don't think it's worth it because prices are almost to the point where you can get something comparable closer to town. So why would you end up all the way in Parrish? So I don't recommend Parrish. I do recommend Lakewood Ranch. All right, guys, so now we are approaching University. Now, anything north of University is Manatee County, Bradenton. Anything south of University is Sarasota County, Sarasota. Anything to the left of us is Lakewood Ranch. So now we're going to cross over into Sarasota and Bradenton for what's known as the University Mall. This is where the new Moat Aquarium is going to be. Huge attraction. The University Mall with every store you could think of, great shopping and dining. This is a really busy area to Uber from. So one great benefit of living in Lakewood Ranch is that you could be between 5 to 20 minutes from University Mall with all the shopping you could want. This is the largest shopping area in this metropolitan area. And if you live in Lakewood Ranch, you're going to be very close to it or easily accessible. Notice as I head down University that there's practically no traffic here yet. You can see more congestion leaving out of Sarasota. To the left of us is the entrance to the University Mall. To the right is a bunch of shopping malls as well. This is a great shopping area, and if you live in Lakewood Ranch, you're going to be close to the shopping area of Sarasota and Bradenton, so nothing wrong with that. If you were to go another 15 minutes ahead, you would be at the Sarasota-Bradenton International Airport. University offers really easy access to the airport as well, so the general location of Lakewood Ranch is very advantageous. I mean, within 15 minutes, we are in the outskirts of Sarasota, and the same thing could be said about Bradenton. Within 15 or 20 minutes, you're in Bradenton, and 45 minutes if you head north, you're in Tampa. 35 minutes if you head on 275, you're in St. Pete. Add 10-15 minutes to that if there's traffic, but the general idea is that Lakewood Ranch is very centrally located in the metropolitan area with easy access to Interstate 75 on Highway 64, Highway 70, Fruitville, and on the bottom by Clark Road, I believe, as well now. So you got like 4 exits to Lakewood Ranch, easy access to the interstate. Now heading back into Lakewood Ranch on University, we're driving past the mall again. You can see the beautiful palm trees in front of UTC. That's the name of this mall, UTC. There's also a new Tesla dealership. I think that big thing for this mall will be when they finally finish that Moat Aquarium. You can see traffic during this time of day is a little busy. We're going to go back underneath Interstate 75. You can see it's a very wide exit, and it's one of these interchanging diamond exits that they're putting up here in Florida. So traffic flows very smoothly. This area has a lot of traffic flow, but it also has a very good infrastructure for the highway system. We're now entering Lakewood Ranch again, and we're gonna go pick up a person in a gated community. Now I made kind of a crucial mistake here. I should have kept driving all the way to Lakewood Ranch and then took a left, but I followed the GPS and it took me through some back roads. That was really a huge mistake. But you're gonna get to see one of the most horrendous things about living in Lakewood Ranch. Notice how you have about 5 lanes of traffic coming into Lakewood Ranch on University. This is really what makes Lakewood Ranch a much better place to live than many of these other suburbs where they're constantly fighting to fight into the city because the roads keep getting narrower and narrower as you drive further out. In the case of Lakewood Ranch, it's like the complete opposite. When you enter Lakewood Ranch, the highways expand, it's all pre-planned, and it makes a lot of sense. Traffic flows very smoothly, and that has to be one of the biggest pluses of living in Lakewood Ranch. As you guys know, we got hit by 2 hurricanes this year in Lakewood Ranch, and we did not lose power at our apartment. The reason is because in our part of Lakewood Ranch, we have underground utilities, which means that even though we had a hurricane with winds blowing at 120 miles an hour, we never lost power. This has to be the most horrendous thing about Lakewood Ranch. There's a half moon roundabout here in this little section of Lakewood Ranch. I don't know whose idea it was to design this thing, but it's an absolute nightmare. It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't know who approved this, whose idea it was, but what a nightmare. Now this roundabout is a nightmare for various reasons. I think the scariest thing is if you're heading southbound like this Jeep is, or any large vehicle that has some height to it, when you make that turn towards the right, you're kind of not able to see the road because your vehicle blocks the vision. So if you're turning like we are now heading northbound, it isn't that big of a problem. But anybody heading southbound in a large vehicle usually veers into oncoming traffic because they can't see the curvature of the road being blocked by the hood of the car on the front right corner. So whoever designed that, what a absolute nightmare. It's possibly one of the craziest things I've ever seen. It's actually so wild. I think I need to make a documentary just on that roundabout. Whose idea it was, I have no idea. But back to the hurricanes. With the hurricanes, not only did we not lose power, but there's plenty of gas stations and shopping plazas. When your shopping plazas do not lose power during a hurricane, it means that the day after the hurricane, you can walk into a store and buy groceries. Many people had to wait a week or even 2 weeks for their closest grocery store to reopen. And when they did reopen, anything that was perishable was gone. So here in Lakewood Ranch, not only are we far enough inland to where we didn't have to deal with the direct impact of the hurricane or the storm surge, parts of Lakewood Ranch have an elevation as high up as 33 feet. So you don't have to worry about storm surge. You don't have to worry about flooding. I know that a lot of videos circulated the internet about flooding in Lakewood Ranch a while ago, and a lot of people made documentaries about it. That was historic rainfall. It rained for 18 hours straight. It's the most rainfall I have ever seen in my lifetime. It's understandable that it flooded, but that is not a normal rainfall event. That was a really strange thing that happened, and that's not going to happen every day. So the videos that you saw about flooding in Lakewood Ranch, and I made a few myself, a lot of people thought that if they bought in Lakewood Ranch, they would never flood. A lot of those people have moved out as well when they figured out that you're still in Florida. Guys, we had 2 massive hurricanes impact us here in the last year. We didn't lose power. I didn't have to deal with flooding. I know a lot of people's houses flooded, and there was that one rain event that had all that flooding. For some people, it was horrible. But me, for example, I didn't even lose power during 2 hurricanes. So the reality of Lakewood Ranch is that it's a very strong, great place to be during a hurricane. A lot of people say, oh, Bobcat Ranch is the best place to be during a hurricane. I was over there for Hurricane Ian, and if I had to pick between Bobcat Ranch or being here in Lakewood Ranch for a hurricane, I would pick Lakewood Ranch hands down. It is a nice, clean suburban area with good elevation, far enough to where you're not dealing with storm surge. There are not major rivers that would cause major flooding. Yes, you have the Braden River, but it wasn't major flooding. Look, frankly, Lakewood Ranch didn't exist 20 or 30 years ago. Everybody that lives here came here from somewhere else, and they don't know what a hurricane is. These people have never experienced an Ian. They've never experienced a Charlie. These people, they don't know what a hurricane is. So for them, it's the end of the world, but they don't understand how well Lakewood Ranch actually did compared to other places. So Yes, we had a hurricane or two actually. Yeah, a lot of people's houses flooded. Yeah, people made news stories about it, said it was the end of the world. No, it wasn't. I am so happy with how we fared on Lakewood Ranch during these hurricanes because I've been through other hurricanes and I know what being in a place that's bad for hurricanes is like. So if you're afraid of hurricanes, Lakewood Ranch is a great option. I think we fared great. I know I'm going to get a lot of backlash from a lot of people about this, but again, they've never lived in Naples or Fort Myers to even understand what living in Hurricane Alley is like and what damages after a hurricane actually look like. No, we actually did great. On affordability, so you can get an apartment starting at 1,500 for like a really tiny apartment. Probably not the best complexes. I would say the Fruitville exit is probably like the trashiest exit. So it's the 64 exit. If you're off of University or off of Lakewood Ranch, you're going to be a little bit better. Of course, there's different tiers to communities in Lakewood Ranch. There's apartment complexes that are borderline bougie, and then there's places like the community we're about to enter right now. So there's different levels to this situation. This gated community doesn't have one gate, it's got two gates. So just so you understand that there's different levels to Lakewood Ranch. Then there's like where I live, where a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. With your utilities, you're easily going to be at $2,600 a month. And that might sound like a lot of money to you. You could probably find the same apartment in Bradenton or Sarasota for $1,800. It isn't the same thing. My apartment has good maintenance. It's luxury. Everything's brand new. If something breaks, they fix it right away. It isn't the same thing. My garbage isn't overflowing most of the time like yours will, so you kind of get what you pay for, and that's one thing you really do need to understand. But there's different levels to Lakewood Ranch, and when they say Lakewood Ranch is the best gated or whatever community in the country, they're not talking about the apartment complex where I live. They're talking about these types of places right here. So you have to understand that when you hear about Lakewood Ranch being the best place to live in the United States, they're not talking about like all these sprawling apartment complexes in all directions. They're talking about like inside of Lakewood Ranch, like inside of these gated communities. This is a whole different level of luxury. You know, like you're talking like this is now, you could say this is on par with Naples, for example, or on par with a gated community in Jupiter. It's like this is the best rated communities. So in the 700,000 to a million range, or even into like the $1 or $2 million range, bang for your buck, it's hard to beat Lakewood Ranch. So if you're spending between 750 to let's say 2.1 million, the bang for your buck in Lakewood Ranch is probably one of the best you're going to get anywhere. So when they say Lakewood Ranch is one of the best communities, they're not talking about the apartment complex behind Walmart. Okay, that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about places like this. Gated communities with large homes, large mature trees, trails, lakes, sandhill cranes. This is the real Lakewood Ranch. This was probably, I believe, the only American passenger that I had all day long. The gentleman was like in his 90s. Very nice elderly man. He was very friendly. Gave me a nice $3 tip, which was fair for the ride. It was a very short ride. So in these nice, larger gated communities, most people tip you really good on Uber. They're always friendly. They're very talkative. They're very engaging. They're really friendly. I mean, I can say that these are some of the nicest people I've dealt with. The only real problem you're going to face Uber driving in Lakewood Ranch, many of the newer communities are not on Uber Maps yet, so you can waste a lot of time trying to find the correct entrance. But overall, the passengers here are very friendly. They usually tip. They're very upbeat. They're very enjoyable. They're very good at communicating. I mean, they're very enjoyable passengers. I can't tell you I've had too many bad experiences in Lakewood Ranch dealing with people inside gated communities like these. They're usually very wealthy, very affluent, very well-educated people. A lot of them gain their success by being like that, so it's a very enjoyable experience. There is a little bit of diversity in these communities. I've had Chinese people. I've had different types of Europeans, some Colombians. So these gated communities are not purely just white. There's a lot of blacks as well. I've had Haitians in these types of communities. I've had people from all over the world. Like, this area has diversity from just everywhere. So you have people from many different nationalities. Just off the top of my head, I can think of Koreans, Chinese, Haitians, Colombians, Russians, Ukrainians, Brazilians, Portuguese, French. So in these gated communities in Lakewood Ranch, like that are kind of upper tier price tags, in these areas that are upscale, you have a lot of diversity as well. But the more expensive communities like this are probably going to be at least 85% white and very enjoyable people. We have a lot of British people here as well. A lot of the English people. I think out of all the people I Uber drive, I think English people are probably my favorite. Shout out to anybody from the UK. We get Scottish, Irish. So yeah, there's a lot of diversity in these gated communities, and they're really great places to Uber drive. I can say I don't dedicate too much time to these neighborhoods. This is kind of one of the few times I've actually Uber driven like solely in Lakewood Ranch, and I did fairly well. It wasn't bad pay. I just think it's kind of boring. I like the excitement of what is out there, you know. I'm kind of a thrill seeker, and it's pretty straightforward here in Lakewood Ranch. So states from up north. I don't know why we get a lot of people from Iowa in this area, but if I had to say what other states populate this area the most, number one would be Pennsylvania, followed by New York, New Jersey, probably in there somewhere. We have a lot of Iowas here. We have a lot of Wisconsins and Minnesotas, a lot of South Carolina, a lot of North Carolina. I'm starting to see a little bit of Kentucky. I don't know why, but there's a lot of people from Iowa here. Texas. I think Texas is probably in the top 3. A lot of people are leaving Texas, moving to this part of Florida. It's a little bit more expensive here, but there's just more nature to enjoy. Texas is kind of a bland state, and I think a lot of people from Texas are moving here. A while back, there were a lot of people from California, but I'm not seeing that many now. Indiana, Michigan, and Mississippi and Alabama are actually in there. That's kind of surprising. I get a lot of people from Mississippi and a lot of people from Alabama. So a lot of people from the South are moving here. And let's not forget Georgia, particularly Atlanta. The amount of people moving from Atlanta over here is crazy. If I had to think about specific cities that are sending a lot of people to Lakewood Ranch, I would have to say Atlanta, Detroit, Cincinnati, Columbus, Syracuse. I mean, I recently even had a passenger from Albuquerque, New Mexico that recently moved over here. So there's people moving over here from all over the world and all over the country. Lots of Canadians as well. I mean, like almost on a daily basis, I can run into somebody from Canada Uber driving. All right, we dropped off our very nice elderly passenger here at this really nice restaurant. It's called The Ballroom. I got out and opened the door for him. It's a really fancy restaurant, and I'm the type of person that's always courteous to people of advanced age. This is the Lakewood Ranch Town Center. It isn't much. There's an Inca restaurant, which is supposed to be Peruvian. It's really suburban. It ain't crap. If we go to the left, we would see an Irish pub, a Mexican restaurant, a few little places you can get pizza. This is what they call the town center. But we're going to the right. You'll see on the left a Starbucks. It's our little town center. It ain't much, but it's really nice, and they have a lot of events throughout the year. In front of us are more of those, what they call luxury apartments here. I think these are probably going to be about $2,600 for a 2-bedroom out the door, and probably for like $1,900 for a small 1-bedroom. The prices vary a lot, even within one apartment complex. Like if you get a lake view, it might be $100 more. If you're on the bottom floor, it might be $100 more. So it varies dramatically. There's no uniformity to it. But if you're looking to live in an apartment in Lakewood Ranch, I guess the smallest, cheapest options would start at about $1,500, and you could probably easily end up in a 2-bedroom paying over $2,600. So one of the hardest things about Uber driving in Lakewood Ranch is getting access into the communities. The gate was open, so I rushed the gate, and you can see the woman had to run back across the road. It was so embarrassing. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. But yes, and this person here, he was a Haitian but U.S. citizen. Now, I didn't ask him if he lived in this community or if he was working, but if he was a worker, he may not have been able to grant me access into the community. So getting into the community would have been a nightmare. So the issue with Uber driving in Lakewood Ranch is almost everything is gated. So when you get into a gated area and the person that you're picking up is a worker doing something, they may not have an access code. So now you're stuck trying to figure out how to get into the community. That's why I rushed that gate when I saw that it was open. And I know it must have been horrendous for the people there. You really can't hear the turbo on my truck because of the road noise, but what they heard was a turbo swirling at them, like, yeah. So that was kind of embarrassing. These people were talking to their neighbors, so I decided to drive around them. I didn't want to be rude and stand behind them. But another beautiful community, and like I said, that previous passenger was the only American passenger that I had all day long. Everybody that I had was from somewhere else. Like this person we're about to pick up now is originally from Haiti. And we had a really nice conversation. We mostly talked about music. You guys know I'm Cuban, I'm Caribbean, he's Caribbean. So we started playing some Caribbean music, and it was just a pretty chill groove. And that basically was most of the ride. But when they say Lakewood Ranch is the best rated community in the United States, most likely they're not talking about those cheap apartment complexes. They're talking about places like this that most of you guys are never going to see. You know, these big, giant gated communities really are beautiful places. And yeah, this is definitely like, you could just tell the palm trees, the landscaping, the homes, the environment, the ambiance, everything about these gated communities would make it among the top rated in the country, hands down. Hands down. Even this could compete with anywhere along the California coast, anything. These are incredible communities. They're very expensive. So yes, Lakewood Ranch really does have incredible places. Most likely you're not going to see the most incredible areas because they're gated communities. And if you're just driving through Lakewood Ranch, you're never really going to see what the nicer communities look like. But, you know, if you get into these nicer communities, there's definitely some incredible places here. And look, I was just in Naples, Florida yesterday, one of the richest cities in the U.S. I think what's nice about Lakewood Ranch is that you have millionaires, but you don't have, like, those snobby, ultra millionaires. We have a few celebrities here. You guys know that the Freedom Factory's here. Cletus McFarlane's the other YouTuber that lives here. Even what's this guy's name? Mick Jagger used to have a house here in Lakewood Ranch. This is a very nice community, but it isn't like freaking Monterey, California, where you have Clint Eastwood, or it isn't like Naples where the freaking Donald Trumps live. This is a nice, wealthy, affluent community, but it isn't like where a house is $100 million. And this is kind of what I like more about Lakewood Ranch. There's enough affluence here to where it's classy, but there isn't this overwhelming snobby sensation among people. Like, there aren't people, you see your Ferraris and you see your Lamborghinis every day and stuff like that, but that's not really even real. That's like, these days, that's new money. That's not like real money anymore. You know, but you have these communities where you have houses into the millions and they're affluent people, they're wealthy, but they're not like extraordinarily wealthy. They don't think that they own the world. So I think what's nice about Lakewood Ranch is, yeah, there's money here, but it's not like this Naples thing where people are $100 million and up type people where they feel like they're entitled to the world. And those types of people, you just don't run into snobby millionaires here. I deal with people here every single day. I picked up some people earlier today, which I'm pretty sure we're definitely into the millions of millions. You know, I pick up lawyers. I picked up people that are somewhat relative celebrities here. You know, there's money here, but it isn't that Naples thing where it's like they're entitled and they think they own the world. You don't have those types of people. You know, one thing that I've noticed about people here as well is because there's the international airports, that the people that live here travel so much more. Like, they talk about their travel experiences. They talk about the culture wherever they're from. It's a very different experience here versus, let's say, Naples, where people there are from New York and then they move to Naples and that's all they know. And they're kind of stuck in a bubble of affluence that they've never escaped. Like, I've met people here that have lived in poor countries. Like, I've lived in Africa, I've lived in China, I've lived in India type things. You know, like, there's just a more humble vibe to the people here. Yes, they have money. Yes, they have class. No, they're not arrogant. And that's kind of, if I were to pick between Naples and Sarasota or Lakewood Ranch, I would definitely be more inclined to like the people here because they have money, but they're not like, they don't think that, they're not entitled. They're not snobby. They're just normal people who have a lot of money. and it's enjoyable to work for them. But like going back to Naples, for example, in Naples, people are just very different. You guys know I grew up in Naples, and it's definitely not the same type of money. Like these people here are a little bit more cosmopolitan. They travel a little bit more. Just totally different people. So I actually like Lakewood Ranch quite a bit, and I haven't had any problems with the wealthy people here. In Naples, like they're always like looking down on you and trying to threat on you. But here in Lakewood Ranch, I haven't had that problem. I feel really comfortable. In fact, Uber driving in Lakewood Ranch today was kind of really nice. I have been trying to do this video for you guys, but most of the time I get rides to Sarasota or Bradenton, so it's really difficult to stay within Lakewood Ranch throughout the majority of the day. It's extraordinarily difficult, actually, because most people in Lakewood Ranch are getting a ride out of Lakewood Ranch. All right, so once again, we're back on University, heading towards Sarasota. And if I had to say which is like the trashiest parts of Lakewood Ranch, definitely Highway 64 exit, the northernmost exit of Lakewood Ranch, Highway 64. That's the least desirable part of Lakewood Ranch. The most desirable part of Lakewood Ranch would be probably somewhere around Lorraine, or just the further east you go, probably the better. If you're right next to the interstate, like if your apartment complex you're looking at is right off the interstate, those are probably the least desirable. So as a general thing in Lakewood Ranch, there's nice areas in the middle too. Like to the left of us is Waterside, to the front of us is this idiot who decided to cut us off and drive really, really slow in front of us. I almost had 4 accidents today in Sarasota, by the way. Today was a really bad day for driving. Not so much in Lakewood Ranch, but further on in the day I drove into Sarasota, and I had nearly 4 accidents. So the snowbirds are down, and boy, are they irritating to be with in traffic. I think I had more close calls in traffic today than I did like in the last 2 months. And when I lived in Naples, Florida, it was just like this. Like during the winter time when all the snowbirds are down, you could hit the road and run to three to four different idiots in a day. So the snowbirds are back and they're really irritating. But that looked like a local. That looked like a young Spanish girl. So I'm not sure why she did that, but it was one of those days where I had a lot of close calls in traffic. The reason you're not going to see the video of every single one is because our batteries died on our GoPro. There was actually a lot of footage recorded today. Heading back towards Sarasota now with our Haitian passenger. Later on in the day, I had some passengers that were from Holland. And so today, basically, everybody that I dealt with was not an American. So this should just give you an eye-opening idea that Lakewood Ranch and Sarasota in general is a very diverse area. It's becoming more diverse, especially if you Uber drive. A lot of people that are tourists or traveling or from somewhere else don't want to drive over here, so you get a lot more of those people on Uber. Lakewood Ranch, when I moved here, like I said, used to be a 95% white demographic. That's no longer the case. I kind of liked it the way it was before, to be honest. A lot of these young kids that are on student visas are very scammy, very fraudulent. You may have heard about the Chilean people on a student visa that attempted to do a home invasion robbery in Lakewood Ranch, and the homeowner had to kill them. That was a horrific thing that happened here recently. Happened very close to where I live. And that's just give you an idea that, you know, these student visas, not everybody coming here pretending to be here for as a student is doing some legitimate student crap with their visas. It's definitely not as nice as it was before, but I can also understand why a lot of people left the state of Florida. When I talk to people that left the area, it's the same old stories over and over again. I mean, for some people, they moved to Florida during that COVID era, and they went back to California or New York. In fact, I'm not going to tell you which one of my passengers said, but one of my passengers said was telling me how much more money he makes in New York, and even after taxes, it's still a better deal than Florida. So a lot of the passengers that I've had recently in Lakewood Ranch have told me that they're moving back to California, moving back to New York, because they just can't make as much money here as they could back in those states. A lot of people don't like the governor, don't like the policies in Florida. The cost of home ownership became ridiculous. Homeowners insurance became ridiculous. Things have got so bad in Florida that literally the state is about to see an economical collapse in the real estate market. It's already taken place in Fort Myers, where 3,200 houses have had to give price reductions in the last 7 days, and it's been increasing. 3 weeks ago, it was 27, went up to 3,000, now it's 32. So 3,200 houses in the Fort Myers MLS with price reductions. Things are not looking good for Florida. So I don't think the problem is people left Lakewood Ranch. I think people left Florida. I think a lot of people are now saying, well, the governor's going to get rid of property taxes in Florida, so the real estate market in Florida is going to rebound. So you're telling me that in order to continue attracting people to Florida, buy real estate here, now you're going to get rid of property taxes to continue to inflate this balloon that's already losing a lot of steam? I don't really put too much trust in. Also, it doesn't mean that homeowners insurance is going to get better. So people are starting to open up their eyes, and a lot of people have already left the state of Florida. I think eventually people were going to figure out that Florida wasn't all it was cracked up to be. I just didn't think it would be on this scale. I mean, I'm talking about a lot of the Californians and New Yorkers have already left for better job opportunities. A lot of people from other states are tired of the cost of homeowners insurance. So we have lost a lot of people that moved here and could have been really great people to have in the state of Florida, but the state of Florida didn't offer them and their families what they needed. So now the next gimmick is there's going to be no property taxes in Florida to continue to attract people to a situation that has already fared very badly for others. I think Florida, I mean, people might continue to fall for the gimmicks of moving to Florida, but I think at this point people have figured it out. A lot of people moved here and a lot of them left. And the ones that are moving here now are temporary. Student visas. We have a lot of people with the temporary statuses. We don't know what's going to happen to them. But even if the people on temporary statuses leave the state of Florida, let's not forget that that's not going to make much of a difference because there's people lined up with student visas ready to take their place. And it's the same scenario. It's the same exact thing, people that are transient. So what does that really contribute to your community in the long term? That's the reality of Lakewood Ranch, Florida. It has been very susceptible to the changes in the state of Florida, and its demographics have kind of accordioned in and out as the state of Florida makes moves to the left or to the right. The influx or outflow of people has had to be really steady in Lakewood Ranch as it adapts to the changes within the state of Florida. I think the fact that you can easily be in Sarasota or Bradenton or Tampa is a great thing. Lakewood Ranch is a great place to live. It's nice, it's suburban, it's affluent. If there's one thing I would have to say I wish I could change about Lakewood Ranch, we don't have too many authentic restaurants. Everything here is kind of suburban and bland, and it really isn't as authentic as you would say Tampa or Miami or even Orlando when it comes to cuisine. Lakewood Ranch is very bland, and to really find good food, you have to drive all the way into Sarasota because Bradenton doesn't even have that many good options, to be honest. This is downtown Sarasota on a Wednesday night. Restaurants are open. People are out and about. Then you got the beaches and the islands. Now, realistically, if you live in Lakewood Ranch, you're going to need at least 40 minutes to get onto any beach. It's quite the drive, but living near the beach comes with complications like dealing with the red tide and dealing with hurricanes. But hey, even on a Wednesday night, this is downtown Sarasota. People out and about, walking, so it's a really vibrant area with good things to do. And if I would say I could change one thing about Lakewood Ranch, it would just have to be that little problem with the restaurants not being authentic. But you also have to consider there are a lot of really good high-end restaurants in Lakewood Ranch. I just recently haven't had the budget for it. So if you like high-end dining, then you might actually like the options in Lakewood Ranch. Now, I've talked to my Uber passengers, and a lot of them tell me that they live in Lakewood Ranch, and they absolutely love the options that they have for dinner here. But I used to live in Naples, which is just more options, I guess. So for me, living in Naples before, I don't think the dining options are as good in Lakewood Ranch, but that's from my own personal perspective. I just wish Lakewood Ranch had more better options for like real authentic dining. Like there really aren't too many good options for Cuban. There's a Puerto Rican restaurant. It's so bad, not even my wife Katie, who's American, would go there. So it isn't authentic. Yeah, there's a Puerto Rican restaurant. It's not authentic. There's one good Cuban restaurant in Sarasota nearby. They're starting to open Cuban restaurants, but not all of them are great. So I feel like if there's one thing Lakewood Ranch could improve in, it would be in having authentic restaurants. And if you're looking for a business idea, open a good authentic restaurant in Lakewood Ranch. I'm sure it would stay busy because everything that we have out here right now is basically suburban. And that's probably one of the downsides that I find with Lakewood Ranch that perhaps other people aren't seeing it because I ask people and they don't agree with me. But from my perspective, I do feel like Lakewood Ranch gets a little boring with the dining options. But it's very practical. You have a Publix on every corner. You got a Starbucks on every corner. There's a lot of great things about Lakewood Ranch. And I can say, coming from Naples, the standards are set high. And this place has not disappointed me in one bit. I've really enjoyed Lakewood Ranch, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone.